Hi, are you curious and want to know how the SFY estimators leverage the ridge and starter as well as the waist in their supplements? Well, you're in for a treat because we're going to listen into some of their training from these past couple of weeks and see how each of them leverages this in their conversations with the insurance carriers. We're also going to cover how to populate the waist calculation tool that we talked about last week based on some requests from you all. So, welcome to SFY Friday Live. Let's start with our waist calculator. And what we have in our waist calculator, one of the first parts of this tool is being able to use the Eagle View, which we order for all of our claims effectively. And so that's the first step in being able to use the waist calculator. Now, of course, if you don't have an Eagle View and if you're old school and like to walk the roof and tape it up and measure it all out or do footprints, you may be able to get the same measurements. Of course, there are other scoping tools out there that will provide you with the same type of information that you could use to populate the waist calculation tool. The waist calculation tool is a Excel tool, and it's very easy to use. So if you're interested in it, feel free to go to the ticker right here, and it'll have the phone number and email so that you can reach out to our staff, and they'll be glad to provide you with a copy of this tool, as well as the supplementing documents that help to explain the math behind the tool, as well as how things are calculated in the real world, so that you come into this conversation with the insurance carrier with as much knowledge as possible. So the first thing is the tool will allow for you to put in the claim number and, of course, the homeowner's information. And that is very important with any documentation that you provide an insurance carrier with, as it will get routed to the correct file and won't get lost in the shuffle. So it will have that claim number as well as the homeowner information on it. The next thing is to populate the actual measurements. And so if we look at our measurements from our Eagle View, the first one that we're going to populate is the roof area, and you'll notice that this is in square footage, okay? Do not convert this to squares, otherwise your calculations are going to be way off. So be sure that you keep it in square footage. The next thing is, it just goes in order, will be the eave starter, okay? That's all in linear feet. Your hip, the sidewall. Now, this is going to be your step flashing, okay? The sidewall length is going to be the measurement for your step flashing. The valleys, very important to calculate these because there's going to be a lot of waste as a result of these type of cuts that cannot be reused. Definitely the rakes, again, more cuts. The ridge, this will all help, again, determining all of your ridge and hip caps. The end wall length is going to be your L flashing. Okay, that's what this is all about. And then finally, we want to look at the type of roof. If you're looking at this document here, we see that we have a hip roof with a couple of little hips added to the front as an aesthetic architectural element. We see that the pitch is a 612, so it's not overly steep. And our roof complexity goes from a scale of 1% to 5%. 1% being the most basic of gable roofs. That would be like your detached garage or a shed. And I'm sorry, I said gable, I meant hip. Whereas your more complicated, a 60 square with 59 facets on 2 different levels, that would be more of a 5% complexity that you would put in this area right here. So once we have populated our report with all of the homeowner information, with all of the dimensions. We then can go ahead and then click the print PDF, which will give us the tool that we will reference and even provide at times to the insurance carrier as support for what it is that we have supplemented for. And typically there's not enough material allowed for in their supplement, which is just based on a very generic, very ill-founded understanding of what waste actually goes into the roof, as well as what's included in that waste, given the preferred platform by most insurance carriers and contractors, which is Xactimate. We reviewed this in last week's discussion, so if you're interested in that, you can always go to our Facebook page and pull up those videos and take a look at the breakdown and how the waste is actually calculated and what we typically supplement for. Alrighty, so in being able to supplement, one of the benefits that we have here at SFY is that we have a very deep pool of talent. People who have been in the insurance industry, who have been independent adjusters, who have been contractors, project managers, sales representatives, teachers, everything. And so with that deep talent pool comes a variety of approaches to supplementing. Some people have a more focused or intellectual approach, just the facts, ma'am, kind of approach, whereas other people have a very energetic and charismatic approach where they will build this rapport with the insurance carrier representative and draw them into this whole supplement with their charisma. And so everybody has a different approach, although we have the same tools available to us. And you yourself may have a particular persona or approach that you use with insurance carriers, and that's a great thing to have and to build on. But it's also necessary to use your emotional intelligence so that you can modify or even bring in different personas so that you can best leverage this against the person on the other side of the table. So not everybody is responsive to an intellectual approach. Not everybody is involved in this charismatic conversation the same way. So you have to be able to read your audience and then modify your presentation based on your perception so that you are able to communicate effectively. Communication is the key to everything in supplementing. That is why it is the key to our core values here at SFY and our company culture. Everything revolves around clear, direct, and transparent communication. Without this, you cannot build trust, you cannot build respect, you cannot build anything or even expect to accomplish successful supplements because you will be too busy putting out fires, reacting versus responding. And so we focus a lot on this with our staff, and what I'm going to share with you is a recording of one of our training sessions. This is one of our chalkboard training sessions where we throw up a topic on our chalkboard and we ask each of our estimators to give their response, their approach, to share what works and sometimes does not work, so that we can all benefit from this and maybe even try something new, some variation to our approach, a new piece of information or leveraging information, or even, if we need to, leveraging our peers. We may ask a peer to make a phone call for us so that they can take what they bring to the table and their abilities and move this supplement forward. Okay? So here goes our presentation. Now, I'll be honest, I haven't had a chance to fiddle with the audio for this week's presentation. So the first estimator, the audio's a little low, listen carefully, turn the volume all the way up, but then after that, everything gets fixed. Okay, so
Recorder is on. All righty. So this is a topic that a lot of us see. And so what I want to get is, as we go down, I'll ask certain people to tell me how it is that you typically respond to this rather than react, and get some head. What works best for you? What is it that keeps that file moving in the right direction? Okay, so here with our first contestant of the day, we have our one of our members. So Colton, how do you respond to something like this? Recorder is on. All righty. So this is a topic that a lot of us see. And so what I want to get is, as we go down, I'll ask certain people to tell me how it
added in extra on top of the waste for the roof. So that kind of, I'll present both of those facts first in writing. That's what we have to kind of push for that, and essentially go from there.
But you know, our company just does not pay for starter.
That's okay. I mean, I understand that. I mean, your company cannot pay for starter, but we're using Xactimate, and we're trying to keep on the same playing field here at this point. So, your company guidelines don't really dictate what we have to put on the roof. I understand. You know, you might not be able to do something, but that's fine. If you don't feel like you can give me an answer on this, go ahead and push me to a manager or somebody that you think might be able to give me a more clear answer as to why you're going against the two things that I have in writing and saying that that's not what this is for.
Stick to your guns. Good job, Colton. Thank you. Excellent. Jason, how do you respond to this?
Honestly, with this, I usually just go for more waste. Typically, if it's just a 3 to begin with, I'll go for a 10% waste, 5 or 10% more waste, or if it's a architectural shingle, I'll add more waste, and then I'll let them know that there's no way that we can cut, you know, a architectural shingle to make that ridge cap. So we're going to need ridge cap and additional waste. But I think attacking them with more waste has sometimes been more beneficial than trying to argue the starter, because a lot of times they won't budge.
And do you find that when you are ready to compromise your line for the waste percentage, that helps to motivate your collaborative on the insurance side to continue to move forward, or do they kind of get stuck on that? Or
actually, yeah. I mean, the way that I present it is just, you know, hey, this. You know, if you can't help me here, can you help me here? And most of the time, if you approach them that way, they're like, yeah, I can. You know, since I can't do this for you, I'll see what I can do.
Excellent. Yeah.
I feel like sometimes they bring that up too. Like some of the adjusters that are, I don't know how to say this. Some of the adjusters that are nicer or understand why we do our jobs sometimes jump the gun and say, hey, you know, our company doesn't do asphalt, or we don't do starter and ridge, but I can give you more waste. And I feel like that happens more times than not too.
And Andy, that's a very great point, because, and then like we've said before, we can pick up and continue to build on that responsiveness on our collaborators' part to you know, hey, that's a good olive branch. We can start from there and work our way up to some of the other more difficult items or topics that are still on the table. Thank you. Great job. Let's hear from our veteran newbie, John. How do you approach this?
It depends on the carrier. First off, State Farm now has a new policy out there where they will pay for ridge and starter but drop your waste to 10%. I evaluate if it's a hip roof. Yeah, I'm definitely doing that because I've got 3 squares worth of shingles for ridge, and it's a huge difference than 5% waste. That's how I try and get it. Well, instead of raising your waste, why don't you lower your waste and give me ridge and give me starter, because I think we end up doing better that way. Ridge is an expensive component, so that's usually how I try and approach it. Or no starter, I'll give you your ridge, but I can't give you starter. Well, give me 12% instead of 10%. How's that for my waste up on? And that's for starter. Ridge, you can, if it's 30 year, I can almost get bought almost all the time because it is a separate shingle. It's not a 3-tab that we're doing on the rest of the roof. It comes pre-cut. It's a separate expensive item, and hopefully they understand that.
Excellent. No, I think you're right on the money. Definitely, we bring our knowledge to the table, and if we're able to articulate that and show how, hey, this can't happen. You can't cut architectural shingles to factor in, and I'm making air quotes here, the magical waste that includes everything, right? Good.
Okay, so that is some of the approaches by our estimators, all very, very good at their job. But I would like to share one estimator in particular. She is very charismatic, and she makes it a point to use this waste calculator as part of her leverage in being able to successfully supplement the jobs. So take a listen to this.
Insight here. I would like to know, does anybody ever in this scenario where we're talking about ridge starter, or even let's say waste is off, has anybody used or shared our waste calculator in support? There, I knew you were going to say yes. Go ahead.
I was actually going to tell you, go ahead and show the newer employees about that, because one of the biggest problems when it comes to waste, you might find a adjuster that would be like, ridge and starters included in the waste. I use Xactimate, so I know what I'm talking about. That's when you can send them our waste factor and say, our waste factor is actually calculated by the measurements of this home. It's not a general thing. It's not a standard thing like your 10 and 15%. Because if you have a house with 20 facets on it, that's nowhere near your normal house, which typically runs you like, 3 to 7 facets. So, I mean, if you're sitting here looking at a house that's, 30 squares, 50 facet, well, that's a little exaggerated. 30 squares, maybe 15 facets. You're going to probably run you about 17 to 20%. They're going to give you 15. If you send them our waste factor, I love to say, look, my waste factor shows by the Eagle View measurements and the measurements of this home that we have a 20% waste. You're only at 15. Can we compromise and you actually give me an item? Don't drop your waste because you're nowhere near the waste that it needs to be. Yes, a lot of them will come back and say, hey, well, you know what, I'll give you your 20% waste. And then, I tend to not fight with them, but it's a proven fact, 9 times out of 10, if you lower your waste even 1 or 2, 3%, you will not subside the difference that you'll get for one of those items. Typically, your starter is more expensive than your ridge, so I always try to go for that starter instead of that ridge, but they'll always give you one item. If they start saying no, come back at them again. Hey, you know what? Listen, let's do 5% for one of those items. It's a long draw, but I'm telling you, it always seems to, in money-wise, it always seems to come out on a positive side. I've never seen them lower it by 5%, give me one of those items, and me come back with less amount of money. The only time it ever happened was when she gave me material only, and I called back and I was like, listen, we need the install, you put it on there, install with the materials, with the labor, and again, I ended up coming out $200 more than what she deducted. So, I mean, I always throw them my waste factor sheet because at the end of the day, they've been programmed to say, you know what, it's a gable, it's 10, it's 15, whatever. They don't have anything else that's really in their face with it. When you send them that measurement, it shows all of our measurements. So it's saying if all these little items are included here, you're going to come out to this percent. I know that you've been standardized to think that it's only 10 or 15, but it's really going to be like a 19, 20%. So we're nowhere near close. So you're already inaccurate about the waste that you're giving me.
I think that you're on the money Just as always, Kendra, thank you. Math doesn't lie, and here it is. Here it is. Math doesn't lie. This is what it's going to take, material and time wise, and I think that is a great tool. I'm glad to see that it has worked for you. Okay, guys. Well,
like you could tell, that is a very enthusiastic and different approach from all of our estimators. The key here is that there's no magic bullet. There's no one key argument or presentation of material or leveraging of tools that is going to secure the supplement. It depends all on you, how educated you are about the topic, how engaging you are with your audience. How are you able to bring in support for what it is that you're talking about? And it takes time. It takes practice. It definitely takes being able to be an active listener. Know who it is that you're collaborating with so that you may leverage the most out of your strengths, avoid any opportunities for people to shut down on you, and to maintain the focus on the supplement. Sometimes that means leveraging the material and even offering olive branches so as to maintain the scope moving and to really focus on what's important on the scope. I hope you enjoyed this insight into this week's training and the topic that we've had regarding waist, starter, and ridge cap. We'll be looking at various topics throughout our discussions. Next week, we're going to shift back into emotional intelligence and then bring up our next topic and supplementing through that session. I look forward to seeing you again and getting more feedback from you regarding topics that you would like for us to focus on and to showcase, as well as any feedback on the presentation. Folks, I hope you have a great weekend and successful supplementing. Take care.